When you hear Silk Road, you probably imagine traders carrying shimmering fabrics across endless deserts. But the truth? It wasn't just about silk, it changed the world, and it's still influencing our lives today. The Silk Road wasn't a single road or even just about trade. It was the first true internet of human civilization, connecting empires, cultures, religions, and technologies across thousands of miles. In today's video, we're going to dive deep into the story of the Silk Road, how it began, the secrets it carried, the dangers travelers faced, and how its spirit of connection lives on today, even in the shadowy corners of the dark web. From ancient silk and spices to Bitcoin and hidden online empires, this is the Silk Road, explained like you've never seen before. Our story begins more than 2,000 years ago, during the powerful reign of China's Han Dynasty, around 130 BCE. At the time, Emperor Wu of Han was eager to expand China's influence and secure new allies against nomadic tribes threatening his borders. He sent an envoy named Xi'an on a daring mission, a journey that would unknowingly lay the foundation for the greatest trade network the world had ever seen. Xi'an's travels opened China's eyes to new civilizations in Central Asia, sparking a hunger for exchange, not just of goods but of ideas, technology, and culture. Silk quickly became China's most prized export. It was rare, luxurious, and honestly just utterly captivating to the people of Persia, India, and even the distant Roman Empire. In fact, Roman aristocrats were so obsessed with silk that Roman senators complained it was draining their economy, and well, corrupting their values. But here's something surprising. The name Silk Road wasn't actually used during ancient times. It was only in the 19th century that a German historian, Ferdinand von Richthofen, coined the term Seidenstraße, or Silk Road, to describe these ancient pathways. To the people who traveled it, it wasn't one single road. It was, a sprawling, ever-shifting network, winding through deserts, mountain passes, and bustling cities, constantly shaped by politics, ambition, and survival. The early motivations behind this grand connection were simple but powerful: trade, diplomacy, exploration. What started as a quest for silk and horses evolved into the first true bridge between East and West, and honestly, the world would never be the same. To truly understand the power of the Silk Road, we need to see it for what it really was. Not a single road, but a vast web of land and sea routes, stretching across continents. The Overland Silk Road began in Xi'an, one of the most ancient capitals of China. From there, caravans would journey westward, across the deadly Taklamakan Desert, over the treacherous Pamir Mountains, into Central Asia. After crossing Central Asia, traders would arrive in legendary cities like Samarkand, a dazzling hub of art, science, and wealth in what is today Uzbekistan. From there, goods traveled into Persia, where merchants in cities like Baghdad would trade silk, spices, and ideas alongside scholars and scientists. The journey continued across the Middle East, finally reaching Constantinople, the magnificent capital of the Byzantine Empire, standing at the gateway between Asia and Europe. And from Constantinople, silk and other precious goods made their way into Europe, reaching famed ports like Venice, where merchants like Marco Polo would later carry tales of the East back to Western audiences. But it wasn't just the land that connected East and West. There was also a powerful maritime Silk Road, a sea network where Chinese ships sailed southward to India, then across the Arabian Sea to Arabia, and even to the coasts of East Africa. Through both land and sea, the Silk Road connected civilizations that had never even heard each other's languages, yet would come to share goods, knowledge, and dreams across thousands of miles. When we think of the Silk Road, it's easy to imagine just caravans piled high with precious fabrics. But the truth is, the Silk Road was about so much more than just silk. Of course, silk was one of the most prized goods, so soft, so light, and so exotic to those in Europe and the Middle East, that it became a symbol of luxury and power. But along with silk came shimmering jade, treasured for its beauty and supposed mystical powers. There were spices too: cinnamon, cloves, pepper, flavoring bland medieval diets and sometimes valued literally by their weight in gold. Speaking of gold, metals and precious stones also made their way across the deserts and seas, enriching empires and kings. Porcelain from China and glassware from the Middle East traveled hand in hand, creating a fascinating mix of East and West craftsmanship. But not everything traded could be packed into a camel's saddlebag. Intangible treasures also flowed along these ancient highways. Religions like Buddhism, Islam, and Christianity, Artistic styles that would blend Persian, Chinese, and Roman traditions. Music and languages carried from oasis to oasis. Even scientific ideas, in astronomy, medicine, and mathematics, traveled the Silk Road. And here's something incredible. Thanks to the Silk Road, paper, first invented in China, eventually made its way to the Islamic world. And then to Europe, sparking nothing less than a revolution in education, communication, and record-keeping. And perhaps even more dramatically, the secret of gunpowder traveled westward, changing warfare, politics, and the very future of nations forever. From silk to science, from gold to ideas, the Silk Road wove a web that stretched across humanity itself. The Silk Road wasn't just a highway for goods, it was a highway for beliefs, ideas, and imagination. As traders moved between empires, they brought with them more than merchandise. They carried their stories, gods, and visions of the world. Buddhism, for example, was born in India, but it spread across the Himalayas through Central Asia and into China, carried by monks and pilgrims along the Silk Road. They didn't just preach, they built monasteries, shared scriptures, and influenced Chinese art, architecture, and philosophy for centuries. Later, as Islam rose in the 7th century, its influence spread eastward through Persia and Central Asia, bringing with it, new systems of law, science, and education. Cities like Samarkand, Bukhara, and Merv became melting pots, where Islamic scholars debated Greek philosophy and Indian numbers were translated into Arabic. Art also traveled without borders. Persian styles inspired Chinese painters. Chinese dragons appeared in European tapestries, and architectural features, like domes, arches, and courtyards, moved across continents, shaped by every culture they passed through. Through religion, science, literature, and design, the Silk Road stitched together the ancient world into something we might recognize today as the first wave of globalization. Long before the internet, before planes or telephones, people were already connecting across vast distances. The Silk Road was the world's original information superhighway. While the Silk Road may sound romantic, filled with treasures and discoveries, the reality was far more dangerous, and sometimes deadly. Caravans had to cross some of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, from the scorching Taklamakan Desert, known as the Desert of Death, to the icy passes of the Pamir Mountains. A single sandstorm could bury travelers alive, a broken wheel or lost camel could mean disaster. Bandits were another constant threat. With merchants carrying gold, silk, and rare gems, caravans were a tempting target. Travelers had to hire armed guards, or risk being robbed, enslaved, or worse. Add to that the chaos of politics, wars between empires, shifting alliances, and corrupt local rulers, and even peaceful journeys could turn violent without warning. A route that was safe one year might become a battlefield the next. Despite the dangers, thousands of merchants, missionaries, and adventurers made the journey. Caravans could stretch for miles, with hundreds of camels and donkeys loaded with goods. Each step forward was a leap of faith, as travelers braved sandstorms, treacherous mountain passes, and the constant threat of bandits. Yet the promise of fortune and the thrill of discovery kept the Silk Road alive, weaving together distant lands through courage and determination. Nomadic tribes, especially in Central Asia, played a crucial role, offering guidance, food, shelter, or sometimes acting as middlemen or translators. Their deep knowledge of the land made them indispensable allies to travelers. Whether navigating harsh deserts or negotiating safe passage, these tribes shaped the rhythm and safety of Silk Road journeys, becoming both guardians and gatekeepers of the ancient trade routes. But the most devastating cargo ever carried along the Silk Road wasn't gold, it was disease. In the 14th century, a deadly plague, the Black Death, likely traveled from China through Central Asia and into Europe, killing tens of millions. This invisible threat moved silently along the same routes that once brought wealth and culture, forever altering the course of history. Merchants, animals, and even flea-infested rugs may have unknowingly carried the infection across thousands of miles. Every bustling marketplace, every caravanserai, and every crowded city became a potential hotspot for the plague's spread. The very networks that fueled prosperity and exchange now became conduits for catastrophe, reminding us that connection, for all its promise, can sometimes come at an unimaginable cost. The Silk Road connected empires, but it also revealed how vulnerable humanity could be when the world grows more connected. For centuries, the Silk Road thrived, a symbol of connection, prosperity, and exchange. But like all great networks, its golden age eventually came to an end. One of the biggest blows came with the decline of the Mongol Empire in the late 14th century. Under leaders like Genghis Khan and Kublai Khan, the Mongols had united vast parts of Asia under one rule, making trade relatively safe and efficient. But as their empire fractured into smaller warring khanates, the once protected roads became dangerous. Trade slowed and trust between regions eroded. Caravans that once moved with confidence now faced uncertainty at every turn. The vibrant exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures faded, leaving only echoes of the Silk Road's former glory. The world was changing, and the ancient route that had connected continents for centuries was slipping into the shadows of history. At the same time, a new chapter in global trade was unfolding. At sea, European powers like Portugal and Spain began exploring ocean routes to Asia in the 15th century, bypassing overland paths altogether. With ships carrying more cargo and fewer risks from bandits or empires, the maritime spice routes became the new highway of international trade. The final nail in the coffin came in 1453, when the Ottoman Empire captured Constantinople, the crucial city that connected Europe and Asia. Once the gateway for Western traders to reach the east, the city's fall meant European powers were suddenly cut off from direct land access to Asian goods. This pushed them even harder to find sea routes, like Vasco da Gama's journey around Africa, or Columbus's search for a western path to Asia. Driven by ambition and necessity, European explorers set sail into the unknown, redrawing the map of the world and opening a new chapter in global exchange. By the end of the 15th century, the Silk Road was no longer the lifeline it once was. The world had changed, and trade had moved from dusty trails to the vast blue oceans. But even as the caravans disappeared, the legacy of the Silk Road remained etched into history. Though the ancient Silk Road faded into history, its spirit is far from gone. In fact, in the 21st century, China has launched an ambitious project to revive it, on a massive scale. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping unveiled the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, a global development strategy aimed at improving connectivity and cooperation between Asia, Africa, and Europe. It's often called the New Silk Road because it seeks to recreate the trade routes of the past, but this time with modern infrastructure. There are two main components: the Silk Road Economic Belt, a network of railways and roads that stretch across Central Asia into Europe, and the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road, new sea trade routes that link Chinese ports to Southeast Asia, Africa, and the Mediterranean. China is building ports, power plants, railroads, and pipelines in dozens of countries, often funding them with Chinese loans and expertise. Supporters say the BRI boosts economic growth and builds critical infrastructure in underdeveloped regions, but critics see it differently. Many Western governments accuse China of using the BRI for strategic influence, creating debt traps where countries become economically dependent on Beijing. There's concern that some nations are handing over control of key assets, like ports or land, when they can't repay their debts. Others fear the BRI is about more than trade. It's about reshaping the global balance of power. Whether it's a genuine vision for global cooperation or a geopolitical chess move, one thing is clear. The Silk Road is no longer just ancient history. It's being rebuilt, rebranded, and reimagined in our modern world. When you hear Silk Road, you probably think of ancient caravans and the spice trade. But in 2011, that same name resurfaced in the darkest corners of the internet. Created by a man named Ross Ulbricht, the Silk Road was an online black market that operated on the dark web, a hidden part of the internet accessible only through the Tor browser. It looked like a typical e-commerce site, but instead of books and electronics, it offered illegal drugs, counterfeit documents, and hacking tools. Transactions were hidden behind layers of encryption and anonymous cryptocurrencies, making the digital Silk Road nearly invisible to authorities. Buyers and sellers rated each other, left reviews, and negotiated deals, all from the safety of their screens. The platform promised freedom and anonymity, but beneath the surface, law enforcement agencies worldwide watched and waited, setting the stage for a dramatic showdown in the shadows of cyberspace. Transactions were made in Bitcoin, allowing buyers and sellers to remain anonymous and untraceable. It was revolutionary, not just for criminals but for the idea of anonymous digital trade. Ulbricht operated under the alias Dread Pirate Roberts, building the site with a libertarian dream of a free market beyond government control. But as Silk Road grew, so did the scale of its criminal activity and its visibility to law enforcement. In October 2013, after a long cyber investigation, the FBI shut down the Silk Road and arrested Ulbricht in a San Francisco library. He was charged with money laundering, computer hacking, and conspiracy to traffic narcotics. In 2015, Ross Ulbricht was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His fate marked the end of the original Silk Road marketplace, a digital echo of ancient trade routes, now silenced by the weight of modern law. The verdict sent shockwaves through the world, igniting debates on freedom, technology, and the true cost of connection in our digital age. The fall of Silk Road was just the beginning. Dozens of copycat markets emerged, some even larger. But it also ignited global debates about online freedom versus regulation, Bitcoin's reputation, and how much privacy we truly have in the digital world. To some, Ulbricht is a criminal mastermind. To others, he's a political prisoner of the surveillance age. His story has become a symbol, sparking fierce arguments about justice, technology, and the limits of government power. As the debate rages on, the Silk Road's shadow lingers, reminding us that every revolution, digital or otherwise, leaves a complicated legacy. From camels on dusty trails to clicks in a hidden browser, the Silk Road's legacy shows how trade, legal or illegal, always finds a way to evolve. From ancient camel caravans to encrypted online marketplaces, the Silk Road was never just a trade route. It was a lifeline between civilizations, carrying not just goods but religions, languages, music, science, and even diseases that would shape the course of history. It helped build empires, sparked revolutions in art and thought, and revealed how deeply connected we all truly are. The Silk Road story isn't just about ancient trade. It's about the invisible threads that bind humanity across time and distance. Its legacy lives on, reminding us that our greatest achievements are born from connection, curiosity, and the courage to reach beyond our horizons. The Silk Road is not just a history lesson, it's a mirror of how humanity connects. Across deserts and oceans, borders and firewalls, we've always traded, shared, and shaped each other. Thanks for watching this journey through time. What part of the Silk Road surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like the video, subscribe for more history with a modern twist, and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next.